Hello and welcome back, adventurers. Get comfy and let me tell you about the history of the lost Timorian civilization. Many volumes are written on the early Timorian history, volumes on the settlement of the land and conquest of its indigenous people, entire shelves about lords, nobles and kings. All this is entirely irrelevant. The true story of the city of Timor begins just over a century and a half ago. Around the year 600 of Barovian calendar, the monarch of Timor, one Queen Arenia, declared she would build the grandest and most beautiful city in the whole world. The city would be the capital and named after the kingdom, with such splendor that all around would flock to it. Shortly after construction began, the queen gave birth to her only child. Curiously, no name is ever given for the child in the official records. She is only ever named as the princess. Even more curious, there is no mention of her father, an odd matter since the king had apparently been deceased for a number of years. The construction continued, and after years of taxation, the peasants became destitute and starving. To add to matters, the site chosen for the city was atop a hive layer of a fierce local predator, the Marikev. But the queen refused to abandon her plan for greatness. Secretly, she approached the country magician, a powerful wizard, and made him a proposition. He would control the Marikev, keeping their population down and restraining their movements to prevent workers' deaths, whilst using illusions of the beasts to frighten the rebellious. In a grand gesture, the queen purchased the services of a company of mercenaries to become the Royal Marikev Hunters. They acted as enforcers during the daylight hours, and the wizard made sure they were effective at keeping the Marikev problem down. Over the years, they even cut down the real Marikev population to a fraction of its size. Despite the progress, the Marikev haunted the queen. She was forever afraid of the wizard losing control over her beasts. She was afraid her dream would fail and that the city would never be completed, and that she would die and be forgotten. Her anxieties over the construction were focused on the Marikev. They became the cause of all her problems and suffering. Around 620 Barovian calendar, Timor was completed. The city was a marvel to behold. Timor was a land that valued magic, and the city reflected this. The walls were constructed with stone, but magical murals decorated the walls, and the gardens bloomed with plants lovingly grown and sculptured by druids. Lamps lit the streets with a glow of continual magical light that never faltered regardless of the weather. Despite the success, all was not well. The queen continued to worry and fret. She continued to harry the workers to improve and maintain the city. Unnoticed, the mists rose up around the city and swept the land away. The princess had long thought that her mother was unfit to rule and that her treatment of the workers would only end in revolt. The princess did not care for the suffering, but knew her future would be threatened by an uprising. She learned that her mother was deathly afraid of Marikev and asked the wizard to create an illusion at a grand ball, an illusion that only her mother would see. It would appear as though her daughter was transforming into the most hideous Marikev of them all, a Marikev queen. Practiced in the art of seduction, the princess easily convinced him. However, the wizard soon saw the princess with her true lover, the captain of the Royal Marikev Hunters. Enraged at being so easily used, he altered his spell. At the grand ball, the princess was turned into a real Marikev queen. The queen died instantly of fright. The princess, now the Hive Queen, realized what had been done, slew the wizard and raged for the streets. Wounded and harried by the hunters, she descended into the sewers, pausing long enough to steer her lover and take him away. After the collapse of the monarchy, the long-suffering workers rebelled. The city hastily set up a democratically elected council, and the first head organized the purging of the wizards from the city, blaming them for much of the crisis. Timor, formerly a state friendly to magic users, quickly turned on them. Hatred brought on by the court wizard was used to seize all arcane materials and items for the council. It is at this point I find reports of another force in Timor. Shadowy killers, unlike the Marikev, that take the forms of their victim or can appear as close friends. These newcomers did not socialize well with the other predators of the land. After a number of years of quiet, the Marikev began to stalk the city again. The Royal Marikev Hunters, confident that they could still deal with the problem, descended into the sewers. The citizens were equally confident, though they began to feel dread as all too human screams started. This event came to be known as the Night of Running Screams. Unnoticeably, a shadow war of doppelgangers in Marikev began, witnessed by the common folk only through terrible cries and the sounds of running in the streets after nightfall. It is over this time that Timorians isolated themselves from one another, behavior that made them easy pickings from both sides. At this time, many travelers also left their land and ventured into the core. In these dark decades, the city was gripped by fear and paranoia. They knew something stalked the streets, but felt powerless to do anything to save themselves. Events finally climaxed in 740, on the eve of the Great Upheaval. The Markov mounted a massive assault, which paired with a closed border, disrupted trade and destroyed most of the farms and parks. The resulting famine caused tempers to flare and people to descend into madness. The final blow came when Timor was struck by an earthquake, the finale of the Great Upheaval. When the dust settled and the survivors discovered the city of Timor itself had been broken apart by the Great Judgment and scattered haphazardly throughout the Suez, once forbidden but now the only chance of survival. The human Timorians found that they had transformed into Calibans, now suited to live and hide in the sunken ruins. It is here that minor skirmishes occurred between the doppelganger populations and the Markov. After the events of Grand Conjunction, the Hive Queen sent out her hunters to learn more about her opponents, who did not seem to be as haphazard as Timorian doppelgangers. It was here that the Fang of the Nosferatu, an enchanted dagger that belonged to Sodo, Paradon's Dark Lord, began to whisper sweet promises to the Hive Queen. It became her obsession. Timor vanished from history until very recently. Bloody Jack's most recent massacre in 755 Barovian calendar became a twisty series of plots involving the Hive Queen, a golem, the doppelgangers, and a party of brave fools. What happened to the dagger is a mystery, but it was apparently lost to both sides, and in rage, the Hive Queen slaughtered most of her brood. I know that the Lord of Paradon is attempted to ally himself with the Caliban Enclave, so as to discover more about his enemy below. Meanwhile, the Hive Queen has relocated her nest and is concentrating on rebuilding her brood. There are other rumors spreading through the tunnels, stories of a second Hive Queen and a Markov fighting Markov. It is possible that the Queen has accidentally given birth to another of her kind, and this has reduced the underground to a war zone. Thank you so much for your time, patient listeners. I have given you all I know about Timor and its inhabitants. I hope this will be enough for you to keep on living. So as always, please be careful while crossing the mists.